Lene is asking, quitting is one thing, but where do they go? This is a wonderful question. Where do they go? When we think about leaving teaching, where do they go? I make this question to our two speakers. Where do they go, Monica? Where do they go?
I don't know exactly where they go, but the few examples that I have, they changed completely of lifestyle. They went to open a restaurant or buying some land in the interior of the country and become a farmer or whatever. They changed radically of career. So they left teaching. They are not teaching in private schools or in other places. They quit of being a teacher.
Thank you, Monica. Ginie?
First, let me address Lena, and I'd like to up the Freud game in this room a little bit, if you all don't mind. I think that many teachers are currently experiencing depression or burnout as a result of their experiences. And what happens in this case, to speak in Freudian terms, is a libidinal disinvestment. Their life force is disconnected from what it had been invested in for many years. And in the depressive position, you are faced with a very strong death drive, which I think is something that fosters burnout. But what I hear also from Monica is that these teachers basically find alternative outlets for libidinal investment, the creative energy and force that comes from investing that life force. And so I think as humans, well, I don't think Freud thinks as humans, we have a fundamental drive to invest our life force in creative energies and doing something creative. At the moment, because the system feels so deadlocked, that libidinal energy is being invested in, opening a restaurant. A lot of people are going out to the countryside and learning to grow food and learning to reconnect with nature. But I think at some point there will be a critical mass where we can reinvest that libidinal energy into recreating almost like the folk high school movement. We are going to reach a tipping point where revolutionary intent and focus can rethink the education system. And I already see this happening in parts of Africa, and Naomi Martha will say a lot more about this and knows a lot more about this, but the teacher's time will come. I think we will see a shift and revolution happening in the next few years.
It's a kind of opportunity for a rebirth as educators?
In a way, yes, because you have this cycle of death drive and libidinal drive. And right now the death drive has, I think, the upper hand as we proceed through like a collective burnout, especially after COVID. But at some point we will, I think, regain when the cracks appear wide across the system. That's when revolutionary energies can be invested productively, also destructively. So we have to be very careful.
Thank you.
So, I mean,
Lene?
12 hours ago, when we started this Global Bildung Day, we had 2 American teachers who had actually left the school system, and they started their own company that promotes a teaching method that actually allows the teachers to inspire the kids more and do teaching in a different way. But the burnout was exactly what they were talking about, and we had some really I think what they were saying really resonates with what you just said, and we have recorded everything, and it will be online at some point. So I really look forward to seeing these things, these various presentations together, because it is it does resonate across at least these 12 hours, but also across continents. So that's really interesting.
I was just saying to Tamar just a few hours ago that I would be willing to go back and teach again if I didn't have to go through all the assessment that was required of me. That my ideal situation, I would do it for free if I could teach and just have students learn and not have to be concerned about testing them, or I have to act like a policeman, and not having to deal with their greater interest in their grade than in what I have to teach them.
Thank
I
you,
so
Gabby.
agree with you.
Yeah, me too.
And we and I would
Roaming
say
up
we've had
this-
at least 3, perhaps even 4 educational projects and some of the other presentations that do exactly that. So something is happening. Maybe the revolution starts here. That'd be kind of cool. Or it started elsewhere and we bring together the forces.
In the previous presentations, we several projects talked about this. Why we're using so many assessments? And Monica, I asked you. You talked also about papers, meetings, and the
Yes.
role of the teacher. And we saw in the fabulous teachers that were role models. Are we missing role models? Is there energy, as Ginie told us, to go forward?
I must say to Ginie, thank you for your presentation, because it was very, 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 very interesting. And I resonate so much with what you said. And it's true. I never saw so many colleagues of mine in depression, and saying that they want to go out. If they had the chance, they would leave immediately, like tomorrow. And it's not because they don't want to be teachers, because they love to be teachers. It's because we are so tired from paperwork. And Ginie said something, I don't know exactly your words, but you said something that I say many times. I feel I am an imposter many times, and that I am committing a crime every day, because I am forced to do a teaching that I don't want to do. And I am forced to, I don't know how to put this, but I have children between 11 and 14 years old, and the system don't want them to be as bright and as intelligent as they are. They want us to be pouco exigentes. Inês, ajuda-me, help me.
It's like passing everybody through without not having the real deepness in knowledge and learning, just having
we look at them and we know that they are capable to do so much, and we can do it because they give us short time, they give us big programs, and they give us the goals that we have to present, and it's very, very, very frustrating. And this has been happening for some years, and so it's true. We are denying these facts for more than 10 or 15 years. This has begun, and we are talking about this, and nobody listens. And now the crisis is here, and there are still people who are saying that we will resolve this quickly, and it's not true. It's really, really not true, and it's very, very bad.
I'd like to add to that actually, having considered all the data and looked at all the facts and figures, it's unlikely that we will have a public education system of any kind within 10 years, simply because what we know of as the kind of welfare state that we've had in Europe since the end of the Second World War cannot survive materially, financially, socially, what is coming. This is, of course, a tragedy for countries in which most people rely on free public education for schooling, but it is also an opportunity because when the system crumbles, that's when creativity can be set free, and there will be no bureaucrats left to chase teachers around. Now, the greatest challenge of our times, the challenge we have now as teachers as the system falls apart, is what do we do? What do we do? And many of us may be called back into the teaching profession, and indeed may have to do it for free, to ensure that education doesn't become something that only rich kids get. Because there's a very real danger that when the entire public system collapses, we go back to a vision of education, which is the original liberal artists' vision, which was it was something for the sons only of wealthy elites. A report just came out yesterday, I think, that the number of ultra rich grew exponentially during the pandemic, and it's only going to get worse. So this is really where the challenge is going to be at, that the public education system is going to collapse entirely, I think is highly likely. I would say that is a very likely outcome. What comes after that? We here in this room do have the power to shape that, and that is something that I'm dedicating my let's say libidinal investment in trying to outline a pathway for what teachers could do. And this is what I call the pedagogies of collapse / experimental pedagogics. This is what I do. I try and create pathways for engagement so that we can be the safety net that prevents societies from falling into civil war, chaos, fascism, and other unpleasant forms of disintegration. And I think everyone in this room has the power to contribute to that. Make no mistake, what's coming is going to be pretty terrifying in many ways, and it could very easily go terribly wrong, as the Ukrainians are discovering at very high expense. Don't think any of us could be spared the chaos, and so we all have responsibility to contribute what we can to put our creative energy into building things so that this doesn't happen.
I'm in Aarhus now, but I'm an American. I want to just amend what I said earlier about teaching for free. I am what, at least here in Denmark, is called a pensioner. So I don't need to draw a salary, but certainly salaries need to be there. In the United States in the 1950s, the top tax bracket was 90%. Since then, taxes for the wealthy have been cut time and time again. I am wondering, and this is my question, if parents have no teachers for their children, will they be willing to support politicians, people like in the United States, Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are out there saying we need dramatic reform in the way money is handled in this in the country, and tremendous redistribution. So far there's been a lot of resistance and there's division in the country. Many people think that we should go in that direction, but too many people are against that. But if it's a choice between having the children go to school and raising taxes on people who can afford to have their taxes raised, that might be a turning point. Do you think that's reasonable, or am I being, is this a fantasy?
So Slavoj Žižek, I don't know if you're familiar with Slavoj Žižek. If
No.
you're not, I highly recommend that you Google him just for sheer entertainment. So this is the name, Slavoj Žižek. He's a Slovenian Marxist philosopher who, unlike most anti-capitalist philosophers, actually has a sense of humor. And one of the things that he says is that, interestingly and paradoxically, ideas that are put forward by Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, is quite mild center-left from a European perspective, are actually providing the final lifeline for capitalism. So the universal basic income, or anything that requires high taxation on millionaires and billionaires, basically provides the lifeline justification for maintaining the modes of production as they currently are. Basically, what we're saying is, let's not touch the way capitalism produces. We're simply going to tax the outcome and then redistribute that. But there's a major problem. You can't redistribute on a dead planet. And where we are heading at is and are currently, I don't know if you saw a paper that was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, one of the top science journals in the world. It was published in July, and it was titled Climate Endgame, published by top climate scientists in the world, using the title Climate Endgame, which says we should seriously consider the possibility of total civilizational collapse and or human extinction by the end of the century. And this is like top climate scientists in top scientific journals. So, I mean, the argument you're putting forward is the argument that Thomas Piketty put forward in his books on the history of wealth and inequality. It's a bit of a no-brainer, but it is also the no-brainer that keeps capitalism churning without fundamentally questioning the modes of production underneath capitalism that are planeticidal. Capitalism has killed more than half of all life forms on the planet since the 1950s. And if we do not question that model and the billionaires and millionaires that it produces, then we are not going to be able to address the fact that the living conditions that we require to survive as a species are very fast being extinguished. So no, I don't think that just taxing billionaires at this point, that's what we should have done in the that's what we should have been doing 70 years ago, which we were doing 70 years ago, but should have kept doing. But at this stage, yeah, we should still definitely do it, but also we need to stop the modes of productions that are causing the collapse in the first place.
Thank you, Ginie. I see two hands raised, Lene and Mihail. Please go ahead.
So capitalism has been good for a handful of things, but it has no break or stop button. So it needs to keep generating interest in order to, it needs to increase the money mass in order to keep paying back interest on existing debt, and therefore it has to keep capitalizing more and more. And so it capitalized nature, and it's now capitalizing our mind, and it's going to capitalize cyberspace, and it's just growing exponentially. And we need to consciously change that game and look at it as a game. And so how can we design that game so it's sustainable long term? The economy that is currently luring people into believing in the system has been called trickle-down economics in the US for the past 30 years. And it's the people at the bottom of the system who has been lured into believing in this model. So we do need a different kind of economic model. And today we tax wealth, well, not as much as we tax income. The reason why we tax income is because of capitalism created a job market and income among a lot of people. Before we had the current job market, we taxed land and wealth in a different way. So we can tax whatever we want. We just need to make a decision about it. So we do need a different system. And on that note, I pass the word on to the Dean of the Kiev Business School, who I think is not a great fan of Karl Marx, because your country was under that yoke for a while.
Yes, I'm not, frankly speaking. My question, I'm frankly very surprised listening to all these condemnations to capitalistic system and so on. My question is just very simple. Could you please mention any other system with totally different results in terms of ecological footprint and all the rest? So I do believe that it's not even worth of our time to battle against this or that ideologies, because it's not just ideological thing. It's something which should be changed in a way the mankind is producing well-being for itself. So if link it to our major subject for today, I mean, why teachers are behaving in this or other way, I'm calling our times as, please forgive me, a new dark ages. Why dark? Because, you know, the oversaturation is very often even worse than the lack of something essential for living. We have oversaturated excess of ideologies, role models, data, information, truths, and technologies. So how not to be misled and feeling desperate if you are teaching? So somebody who should place a goal, explain goals and objectives to youngsters. If you are all lost by yourself, you know. So that's why probably we shouldn't limit our discussion only to teaching children. Teaching children is merely a part of much more larger task of teaching humans, lifelong teaching humans. And if we will solve the puzzle of teaching children, probably we will not dissolve the problems we are faced to. So it's not a matter of capitalism. I'm very much a fan of Erich Weinhocker, who defined capitalistic system as a mechanism, say, a process of constant adaptation of society to the changing environment. That's all. We need to look at what Bildung is looking much more attentively. It's to the nature of humans, to nature of our way of treating the earth, way of treating ourselves. And to add just few words to the teachers' problem. You know, problem of teachers lost in technologies is overlapped in our country with much more larger problems of the war, a much more larger problem of systemic changes, because everybody knows that we should not and could not teach our children the way we did it before. And even the Ministry of Education plays a role right now of, say, decoration in vast majority of things. So I do believe that these slides in global slides in teachers' behavior requires recognition of crisis beforehand. And this recognition, where teachers are asking themselves what we are doing with our own life, then will be leading a transformation of their presence in the school and what they are doing with children, and how they are teaching themselves as an adult. Something like this. I do believe it's not an ideological game right now. Because when we are talking about socialism or capitalism, socialism is so awfully misleading system, so we shouldn't even take it into account. But we should think in terms of sustainability, in the terms of perspectives, in the terms of others, you know. So I so many times listen to the stories of death of capitalism for tens of years, you know. So I don't believe it's true, because it's constantly changing thing.
Well, thank you, and thank you for sharing your different perspective. I believe Lene has raised their hand. It seems to me that it's connected really deep with Bildung roles and the new movement, neither this or that, but the disruption. And I would make a sparkle here about the quiet quitting, this movement that we are talking about. Teachers, it's happening, or for some of us all over the world, as a way of bringing awareness to something new. Lene, please.
I guess we have known about 3 or 4 kinds of economy right now. One was the original gift economy, which was in indigenous cultures. Then we had a feudal economy where some people had privileges and owned the land, and everybody else owned basically nothing and were serfs or slaves. And then we have known the capitalist system, out of which grew the counter movement, which was then the socialist system. And we've had in every industrialized country a right-left or left-right axis that was about the struggle over the economy, with capitalism on the one side and socialism on the other. And where we are right now is that we're going to go to something that is beyond all of these. And so saying that the alternative to capitalism is socialism makes no sense, because we need to go beyond both of them. In that economy will be socialism and capitalism and feudalism and gift economy and everything that went before it. The question is, how do we balance it? And what is the new thing? And one of the interesting things that I have heard people talk about is, how do we mimic the processes in nature, and how do we create an economic system that learns from biology? Because biology keeps producing and producing and producing, but it doesn't produce any waste, because everything goes back into the system. So if we could learn from nature, and that is where we will have need for biology teachers, for instance. I mean, the economist should study together with the biologist, and the biologist should study with the political scientist. So we need this, and you mentioned the Bildungsrost. We need these different kind of sciences to work together in order to grasp the world that we're in and develop the next model. And somebody asked if you can get to talk to, or we can hear some of the Ukrainian speakers or participants. We actually have 2 of them in the program, not in the next session, but the session after. So there'll be plenty of Ukrainian speaking in the program. But with regards to the teachers leaving, I don't know if there's a particular Ukrainian angle to that. But I will stop here and
So I agree with Lina, and also I'm married to a Romanian man, so I'm very well aware of anyone who seriously suggests that state socialism is an acceptable alternative to capitalism needs to stop smoking whatever they're smoking. But I look at capitalism, you know, I came from a working class family. My family was lifted by capitalism as well. And you know, a lot of people in China, in India, in Africa have been lifted up by the forces of capitalism. You just need to listen to Hans Rosling or Steven Pinker if you want to be convinced of the benefits of capitalism. So this is not about disparaging ideologically a system, but simply I'm looking at it from a physics and engineering perspective. The energy dimension of capitalism and its reliance on fossil fuels to drive growth, this cannot be replaced with renewables, which currently account for 5% of all wind, solar in the world account for 5% of all energy generated in the world today, with 70% being coal, oil, and gas. We are going to hit the peak even before we cross the hothouse Earth threshold on climate. And I just don't think that capitalism knows how to continue without this energy injected into it. But one of the most inspiring alternative visions that I have ever read, to answer the question, was actually from a science fiction novel. It was called The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. And in it, she imagined, it's the story of 2 planets, a capitalist planet that is thriving with life, but like ours, underneath lurks a mass extinction event, and a barren moon onto which a community has been established. And I encourage people who want to try to imagine what other forms of living together are possible, inspired by indigenous communities, inspired by, and the interesting subtitle of the book. It's called The Dispossessed, an Ambiguous Utopia, because it's the recognition that no alternative system is perfect. It's just that, in my view, I don't think capitalism as we know it can survive the energy chokehold and the climate crisis. And I do think we have the power to shape something else, and it definitely won't be perfect. But yes, I would love to share thoughts and views that people have on Ursula Le Guin's work.
Thank you, Ginie. And you reminded me of a quote from our friend, Manuel Manga, that says, Bildung is the achievable utopia. Maybe not perfect, but something to dream and have a meaningful hope for the future. So hopefully that this debate and panel increased our awareness and different views and opportunities to collaborate to co-create this future.